Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So, what's your name?
I'm Brendan Ternus.
Oh, welcome. I'm Karina. Welcome to my blog. Can you tell me a little bit about your kind of teaching and learning background?
For sure. I have always been interested in working with kids. I grew up moving around a lot, and I actually attended, I think the total is 11 different schools throughout my upbringing. So most of them international schools in different places. I got to experience a lot of different environments, and I think that probably planted the seeds for trying to become an educator myself someday. When I was at university, I went to Yale, and I didn't actually study education, but I spent my summers working with kids in various capacities. Two of those summers I spent working for a nonprofit in New Haven, which is the city where Yale is, working on an enrichment program for local public schoolers. And it was a really cool organization because 9 university students get together each year and create like an alternative learning camp for around 80 public schoolers, and all of these university students design courses in whatever kind of subjects they're interested in, and that was really formative for me, especially in terms of like how rich and exciting education can be when first of all the children are choosing to be part of an educational experience, because all of these kids had to apply, they had to really push to get into this program, as well as how great it can be when educators have the freedom to experiment and try new things.
What experiments did you do? I mean, you were able to kind of come up with your own lesson plans kind of from scratch? What did you...
And the whole focus of the courses that you were able to do as part of this program, it was really open to kind of thinking outside of the box in terms of the traditional top-down classroom model. So, for example, I designed a course about astronomy that was partially scientific and partially kind of cultural history, so looking at how astronomy has affected human culture throughout the ages. And that was really great because I think the kids had not really been exposed to such an interdisciplinary like thing before, and then they also I did my best to make the course as hands-on as possible. So we would do things where the kids were taking the lead on a project, and I would say, okay, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of astronomical data, and you need to come up with a theory together about why this is happening. And they inadvertently would go through the steps that Galileo did when he was trying to figure out why the moon looked the way that it did, or something like that, where they really felt like, okay, I need to be active as opposed to passive in receiving knowledge. I think other people who were designing courses did some really great things. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. There was a philosophy course where the kids had to bring real life dilemmas from their own lives in and then examine them through a philosophical lens, or a psychology course where the kids were, unbeknownst to any of the other like adults or children that were at this camp, conduct psychology experiments on people, and then like present their data, as well as talk about like what psychological ethics were involved in that kind of situation. So really sort of free-form and exciting education work that took place outside of the boundaries of the traditional school environment. And I definitely benefited from, quote-unquote, the traditional school environment growing up, But I was realizing, especially through experiences like this one, that children in the future are going to benefit less and less from that, and I already feel particularly lucky to have gotten the opportunities that I had growing up. And I think there are a lot of kids who, either because of their circumstances or because of what they're going to need in tomorrow's world, that's not going to be enough for them. So I think that really inspired me to get involved doing more innovative work. After university, I moved down to New Orleans, and I was originally going to try and get a job in a school as a full-time teacher, but I wound up taking a job as what was called a teaching artist through a nonprofit called Young Audiences. And what they do is they embed artists in a school, in a traditional school, to teach art classes as an elective. And that was another very interesting experience, because we're talking about some of the most challenging teaching environments, I would say, in the world, where things are under-resourced, and the kids are coming from all kinds of backgrounds and have like very large challenges to overcome. And I was going into a classroom where some of the kids were not even able to read, and I was saying, we're going to do creative writing, or we're going to do photography, which just for them did not feel I think it took a lot to adjust and I don't know, tailor my expectations to where the kids were and where I thought that they could eventually go. And I think it was a wake-up call again about how I think the environments that we rely on to help prepare kids for the real world are not adequate anymore. But again, I don't want to seem like I have a vendetta against traditional school. I just think we can do better. And that's what brought me to Beijing eventually. After my year teaching in New Orleans, I basically was at a crossroads, and I was like, either I need to integrate myself more fully into this school system and be a more active participant in that, or I need to pursue this kind of enrichment alternative education path. And when I found an opportunity to come work on this project, which is called Armada Education, I kind of jumped at the chance and moved to Beijing to do that.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So can you tell me a bit more about Armada?
Yeah, so Armada was founded by a pair of Chinese entrepreneurs. They're a couple. They had had success in several other industries, but really were looking for kind of a passion project that they could devote their full energy to. And around that same time, they had a son, and in looking for a school environment for him, realized that there really wasn't anything out there that matched kind of their vision for what learning could be like. They'd both had an experience where they were really successful within the Chinese education system. Both of them graduated from Tsinghua University, which is one of China's top universities, but graduated without a clear sense of where they should go from there, or what a meaningful way to spend their lives and use their skills would be. And they didn't want that to happen for their son, but they couldn't really find an environment here that would solve that problem. So they actually realized this is the perfect passion project for them, and they started looking for educators to join them and develop the project further, which is kind of when I came in. Now we've been going for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and at this point we have several programs in place. Two of them are alternatives to a full-day school experience, so kids come to us instead of a traditional school. And then we have after-school offerings as well in both language learning and arts education. And that's what we have going on at the moment, but our vision is a little bit more long range than that. Eventually, we would like to establish learning centers all around the globe that are interconnected, where learners are able to travel around the world and learn in all these different places. And each one of those centers would have programming and resources available for kids to be learning according to the pedagogy that we've been developing for the last year and a half. And that pedagogy is all about cultivating what we call creators, who are learners, lifelong learners who have 3 essential skills. The first is called entrepreneurship, which is all about thinking innovatively and practically and trying to solve real problems. The second is called big picture capacity, so having a clear understanding of the educational landscape for themselves, where they can learn, as well as like the ability to make connections and see a broader picture of what is out there in the real world. And the final one is what we call complex communication, so trying to know themselves well enough to express themselves clearly and express what they think, and be able to collaborate with other people in a way that is empathetic and effective towards, again, solving problems and doing real things. And we've also been developing a toolbox of educational methods that includes things like real-world learning or travel learning or product-oriented learning, ways that we can use those tools to basically educational methodologies that could be applied to any subject that children are interested in, along the path towards becoming those creators.
That sounds awesome. I'd like to become a creator and travel around the world. You talk about lifelong learning. Is there an upper age limit?
Well, ultimately, yeah, it's been a really cool experience for me, just to speak from my own experience. I, since coming to Beijing, have learned so much, and I think I really would not have gotten as much out of my time here so far if it hadn't been for this opportunity. I think if I come over here for a traditional job, I might have worked 9 to 5 and then gone home at the end of the day and not really thought of the work that I was doing as integrated with the living and the learning that I do on a daily basis. Whereas like developing the programs and the like educational experiments that we do with the kids has taught me so much about how I learn and methods that I can use to learn Chinese, for example, or explore my interest in photography or things like that. And our goal is for what we call the mentors, who are the adult learners in our centers, to be just as engaged in a learning process as the young learners, the children that they're working with. So yeah, there's not really an upper age limit. I think there ultimately will be a lot of opportunities for people of all experience levels to get involved in things, because we're already a multi-generational team. We have young learners who are 9 or 10 years old. We have 20-somethings who are working towards this. We also have Nicholas and Cassie, our founders, who are in their mid-30s, and all of us share our own experiences in trying to create a kind of holistic learning environment.
Yeah, I really like that idea of the kind of dual role, kind of teacher-learner. I definitely feel that I learn a lot being a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm really kind of pro peer-to-peer learning, co-constructing knowledge and experiences. So I really, really like that. Can you give us an example of a lesson at your school? What happens?
Yeah, so actually we wouldn't even call them a lesson.
Okay.
I could walk you through one of our educational experiments. a good example would probably be what we called the History Forest Project. So the forest part speaks to the big picture capacity that we're trying to build. Forest refers to this idea of like seeing the forest before you hone in on the individual trees.
I see.
So having a full sense of that comprehensive picture of things, and then later they could focus in on like individual historical subjects. So what we did was we created an actual wall within our space that had a map on it, and it had a very large timeline from the beginning of time up until the present day. And then with the learners involved at every step of the way, we basically worked to fill in that timeline and situate every event or period that we researched on the map and on the timeline. And how that worked was we basically collaborated in small teams, researching what was going on in certain regions during certain periods of time, and picking out what seemed like some of the most significant events or movements or revolutions or whatever was going on during those times, and then creatively presenting what we had found to the other teams. And in doing that, we actually that was an experiment as well, and the History Forest Project evolved as it went on. We found eventually that as it got closer and closer to the present day, that it was better to do research as a full team rather than splitting up, but still continuing to try and do some of those creative responses. We also found that the way we were connecting the events with their locations on the map wall, this is a very concrete thing, but it was making a huge mess. So we went back to the drawing board, and we decided on a better way to depict those things. So I think the kids really felt some ownership over the process because they were part of all the conversations, including the kind of methodology conversations of how should we actually do this, as well as the research and the learning itself. And they also got experience taking notes. If we were looking at something, it wasn't the adult's responsibility to notate everything. The kids had to write down what the dates were, what the important information was. And yeah, I think that's a good example of how collaborative a lot of our learning is. It really is not a top-down process. It's a lot more kind of like you said.
Organic.
Yeah. What was the word you said? Like cooperatively or
co-constructing.
Co-constructing. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it.
Co-construction. You talked about creatively presenting work, and that kind of leads me. I start to think about technology and the use of technology in the, well, I don't know if you call it a classroom, but how does that work? Is technology integrated into your projects, into your experiments?
Yeah, it is. I think that's one area where we are really interested in developing further. I think at this point there are many organizations out there who are doing amazing work in terms of learning through technology, and like Khan Academy is a wonderful example of that. Salman Khan is a huge advocate for using technology in the classroom, and I've been really inspired by his work personally. But for us at this point, we have been kind of evolving our more analog sense of like what is learning, how do people work together in a like face-to-face learning situation. And I think at this point we're moving in the direction of trying to use more technology, especially as we grow as an organization and grow our experiments to reach more learners. For example, we, even just in the way our team coordinates our projects, we have been moving online, moving into the cloud, trying to use new apps and things like that to get more efficient and also more kind of big picture ourselves. But yeah, I think with the learners themselves, they do get experience doing research online or recording their performances, or one of the learners recently, we wrote a book together and he decided to create a video where the illustrations popped up on screen along with his narration, and he got to experiment with video editing software that way. And I think that kind of stuff is super important. It's something that might be a weaker area of our curriculum right now, but something that we're really interested in doing more with.
Yeah, that gets me thinking to a future module that I'm going to do. It's called Tele Collaboration, which could work for your, you have this kind of future plan to have schools in different geographic locations. It's just the idea of collaborating on a project together online. I think our future project, we might be creating a wiki page about something that interests us, and the idea is that we have this dialogue, this discussion and negotiation online. We come to some sort of consensus about what we want to put in there, and there has to be some research involved, and decide how we're going to present that in visual form. Are we going to have text? So I think this idea of tele collaboration, you're almost there. I think you're doing a lot already. I think you are integrating technology quite well. Maybe you can think about a tele collaboration project in the future.
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
Another question I had, it was just about, because I think this is kind of, I love the idea of your school. But in the China context, I see it as quite radical. What has been the reaction to a school like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've grown a lot, partially through our failures, as we would try and encourage our learners to do. I think we've had several efforts at marketing what we do to Chinese parents that have ultimately led to some very informative conversations, but not a huge amount of enrollment. And I think part of the reason for that is because China's education culture is so entrenched and so important. I mean, we're talking about like examinations that have been around for centuries. So when we talk about doing away with some of those structures, there's bound to be some pushback, or I think you said earlier, like a tough sell on our part. And yeah, I think we're aware that China is changing extremely fast. We see education as an area in China that lots and lots of parents are very invested in, but there are not that many innovative solutions coming along to match the really remarkable growth and innovation that's happening in other industries. So we really see this as a golden opportunity for educators, both in our organization and other people working here. It's part of the reason we're so excited to have our first kind of learning center and experiment here in Beijing. But yeah, I think Chinese parents in general are they're really, really committed to their children's education, but when it comes to the methods themselves, there's a really wide spectrum of what parents are willing to accept. And I think ultimately we need to prove ourselves before we can expect a lot of Chinese parents to come on board. And we're confident that that can happen. It's just a matter of time, which is one reason why I'm very grateful that everyone in the organization is willing to invest that time and has a longer sense of things. Because if we were trying to get a thriving business off the ground with many customers right away, I think we would have to make a lot of compromises about what we're eventually trying to do. And for now, we're trying to develop in a deeper way, so as to eventually show as many people as possible that this is actually the right, or at least an effective way to be working with kids.
Yeah, I feel that there's a feeling in the air that it's change. There's change and there's development, especially in education. And I feel it as a teacher of English that parents and the system are opening up to alternatives. What was once, learning to pass an exam, now for the English language, we're getting to the point of wanting to be able to communicate, and I think that's a really big step. And I think that we're going to see those big steps kind of reverberate in other aspects of education in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you
Been
for
a pleasure.
inviting me to talk. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.